My name is Chris Holka. Work with a local Michigan-based IT staffing consulting firm. Our name is Recruitment Management Consultants. Been working there for about 2 years now. I'm one of their senior recruiters, so working with a lot of local organizations and on various different roles. So I have a pretty good idea of kind of what the market looks like for not only testers but any IT professional.
Hi, my name is Clint Hoagland. For those of you who haven't met me in the past, and I think I've met most of you in the past, I am a software testing lead here at TechSmith. I work on our Camtasia program. I've been in the testing business for about 12 years, and I've been working here at TechSmith for about 10 of those years.
I'm Julie Neal. I'm also... Oh. We have two up here.
I'm trying to give you that mic.
I'm Julie Neal. I also work here at TechSmith. I am a tester on Snagit. It's a screen capture software. And this is my second career. I went back to school in programming, and as part of that whole experience to graduate, I needed to have an internship, and I was able to get into testing at that point. And so I have learned everything I know about testing on the job. And I have been I've been working in testing for about 7 years, and the last 4 of those here at TechSmith.
My name is Teresa Potts. I've met a lot of you guys before. I have been in software testing for 10 years, all of which has been at Vertafore. And so I've worked on a number of our products there. Some are very, very old. Some are brand new. And so I've seen lots of things, good and bad. So I'm sure we'll get more into that.
All right, we'll get started with the first question. This is going to be for the testers. How did you get started in your career in software testing so that people can see the journey is varied for everyone? And also, why did you choose to stay with testing?
We're on. How did I get started in software testing? Okay, so I went to school for as a composer. I studied music in college, and I actually got my master's degree in film composing. But then, as I was starting out to be a freelancer, my wife came down with a pre-existing condition, which meant that it wasn't going to be possible for us to purchase health insurance in the open market because USA. So at that point, I decided I needed to get a regular job, and so I started working at auto owners insurance in the tech support department, and worked there for like 5 years. But at the end of that part of my career, they said, "Hey, we want you to become like part of our new QA department that we're forming up." I'm like, "I'm not sure I want to do that." They're like, "We're not really asking you whether you want to do it." And so I became a software tester over there at Auto Owners. And I was not really very happy there, but I had some friends who worked here at TechSmith, and they're like, "Well, we need more software testers here at TechSmith." I'm like, "Well, I'm not positive I want to stay in the testing job, but TechSmith seems like the sweet place to work." So I applied for the job here and got that job, and now I've been working. I really like working at TechSmith. So the answer to why do I stay, stay in the job of testing. I'm not necessarily married to the job of testing so much as I like doing software development, and I like doing it here. If I were to work someplace else, I'm not sure whether I would do testing or something else.
Question, Julie?
So like I said, I got into it through the school program, although I didn't study any software testing in school. And I worked on a couple different government projects, so BAM and MICES, and then I went into the private sector by coming here, and the methodologies are completely different. I really like the collaboration that we have here with the Agile methodology. I'm able to collaborate with the developers as well as other QA, so pairing and learning from others is a huge plus for being here. I really like the interaction, and I stay here because it's varied. I've done mobile apps, and now I'm on desktop apps, and I like learning and I like exploring, and TechSmith is a great place to work.
So Clint and I kind of have a similar background. My degree is in music business. I wanted to be an audio engineer. And of course, audio engineers work in, weird hours and in dark rooms, and, don't get to see people very often. Probably come off kind of creepy, who knows what they look like, disheveled all the time. Picture Beethoven and like weird. Anyway. Yeah, audio engineer Beethoven. But I worked at Jackson National doing processing for the new business lines. And so I actually was kind of our end customer. Now working at Vertifor, because we make insurance software for the industry. But while I was there, I saw a disconnect between what we were building and what people actually needed. And so the same day we would have deployments, there would be a workaround. And so all of a sudden we'd be sending out this doc to everybody. Hey, here's the workaround because they broke this thing. And I'm like, this just came out. This is supposed to help us. Like, what are we doing? And so I wanted to make the world a better place. Tried to get into a role at JNL doing more of that. And they said, we don't think you're ready. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And so that's when I came across Circon, which is now Vertifor, and kind of got into the role that way. Never had any testing experience prior to that, so everything was brand new. But then about halfway through, went back to school at LCC because the company pays for going back to school and whatnot, and so got the training in software testing and coding and product management and all that kind of after the fact, even though I'd already been experiencing it. So it's kind of an interesting journey, I guess.
All right, just to let everybody know, we will have a spot where you can ask the panel questions. Right now, we're just going through trying to get a feel for who these people are and what some of their journeys. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask them at that point. Following along, we've got what are 2 reading recommendations you would give to new software testers and why? And then following that one up with any recommendations for seasoned testers. We'll start with Teresa, work our way back.
Interesting. I know there's books that I've read kind of after the fact, but I'm more of a person that does better hands-on. So I don't know if I have any reading recommendations off the top of my head right now. I mean, there's tons of books out there, but I think for me, talking to other experienced testers, like meetups like this, going to conferences, being hands-on in your office, and the situation that you're in usually helped me more personally, especially if you're literally brand new to testing. The words on the page aren't going to mean much until you get to apply it. They're just going to be words and concepts, and it's not going to really apply to anything until you do it yourself. And so for me personally, that's what I recommend. As far as seasoned testers, I guess I still recommend the conferences and things like that, using social media and web pages to kind of present your brand and what you have skills in. Also, one of the things I recommend is also interviewing every year or 2. Like, if you are not doing that, you're kind of losing that skill set. And even if you're not necessarily interested in moving to a different place, finding out what other companies are using, what new technologies people are thinking about, how people are thinking about solving problems, that kind of thing, is good to have that conversation with other people. So that's my recommendation.
So I actually got to see the questions beforehand, so I wrote down so I cheated and I wrote down a couple things that have been formative for me. So when I started at TechSmith, I was on mobile apps, and the thing that we read was I sliced up fun. In fact, I think Wendy was the one who suggested it. She does mobile apps now too. And it's another mnemonic, a way of asking questions about the software and how it helps to generate ideas and think of things that on my own I wouldn't come up with. And so mnemonic things are helpful for me. I Sliced Up Fun is by Jonathan Cole, and SF Depot is for any kind of software product, and that's by James Bach and Michael Bolton. Those have both been helpful for generating ideas. And then 2 books that I've read are Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson, and You Are Not Done Yet is not a book, but 32 Pages by Michael Hunter. And both of them just help in seeing the adventure that we're on and trying to find the bugs, the things that are not readily apparent, and just new ways of looking at it to kind of keep the brain going and changing up the thought patterns.
In addition to the books that she meant, the Explorer It is a great one. We did a book club here at one point. Jerry Weinberg's got a book called Perfect Software and Other Illusions About Software Testing, which it's pretty short, but it's a useful book. I thought it was interesting. The other thing that I hand to new testers who start here at TechSmith is Michael Bolton, who she mentioned, has a long blog post called Testers Get Out of the Quality Assurance Business, which I think really resonated with me with regard to what I think the role of testers should be on a team. It's sort of it makes explicit the dichotomy between like testing versus checking, and sort of sets people up with a right mindset to start a career in testing, I think. For experienced testers, it kind of depends on what you're doing in your career, and like whether you're planning on being like a technical tester or something, or it just depends on what type of testing you're doing at that point in your career. For example, if you're getting into like trying to get legacy code wrapped in automated tests, Michael Feathers has got a great book called Working Effectively with Legacy Code. I found Bob Martin's book about agile principles and practices. There's another P in there, but yeah, Bob Martin's got a book about agile practices and principles, which is I found useful. A new one that just came out that I'm finding really interesting, but I'm only partway through it, is Katrina Clokey is a tester from New Zealand. She wrote an ebook that you can get for free, but it's got like a requested donation of $15, but it's anywhere between $0 and $15. It's called The Practical Guide to Testing in DevOps, and I thought there was a lot of really interesting she's got a really interesting approach. Like she will do an experiment about how to do some sort of team technique for testing, and then she'll explain the details of her experiments in her books. And I thought that was she's got an interesting writer, and she has really cool ideas.
Nope. We're going to stick with you to keep it going.
We're doing one of these. All right.
Yeah, we're keeping the circle going. Next question is, social media is huge in the technology field. What should I be doing on social media in my role as a tester, and where would I go to interact with the testing community?
Oh boy. All right. So a couple years ago, I would have said Twitter. Twitter is now also like sort of our view into the destruction of Western civilization. So it's fun for that reason too. You can have you can find testing people on there, and also you can witness society collapsing. I've also heard that people like LinkedIn. I haven't tried LinkedIn.
So this is a short one. This is something I don't do anything with myself, so I'll give it to Teresa.
Follow up with that. Why
Sorry.
don't you do anything with it?
Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, I have a lot of interests, and I am really focused when I'm here at work, and when I'm not here at work, I'm really focused on not being here at work.
So social media, it's kind of funny. Years ago, I kind of avoided all of it as much as I could. And now I'm active on most of them, which is total turnaround. I initially signed up for Twitter when I was at a conference. There were people that I met that were really cool, and I wanted to keep in contact with them. And they said, "Oh yeah, just follow my Twitter handle." I was like, "I don't have Twitter." And they were like, "Well, sign up and get Twitter." And I was like, I don't know if I want to. And they were like, well, do it. And so I did. And I remained friends with those people. And picked up on more friendships through people that they follow. And so sometimes we can get into a big, chat, even in Twitter, about all kinds of testing and dev topics. I also joined LinkedIn, I guess just to kind of connect with mostly former coworkers, because once they move on, it's kind of hard sometimes to keep track of them and know what they're up to, know what they're learning, that kind of thing. And so I started doing that, but then started connecting to current coworkers and everything. And then, of course, there's recruiters and things on LinkedIn. So they send me nice emails, and some of which I don't even know where these companies are, which is usually pretty funny. But I use that now as kind of a launching point where if somebody is interested in what I have to offer, they can go to my LinkedIn. And then from there, I have like a website that has like my resume and, projects I'm working on and things I'm interested in. And so I use that, I guess, in combination. I have found people, I guess, through other friends in LinkedIn. So like I had a tie-in to going to LCC for doing the courses there. And so I've had people say, oh, well, this student is really interested in this thing. Can they friend you on there? Can they talk to you? And then that could be a launching point for other conversations. And so those are probably the two I use primarily the most for QA related things. Of course, I have Instagram and Facebook where people talk about everything. But those are the two I use primarily, I guess. And then I also use my own. I own the Teresa Potts domain and Teresa M. Potts domain, even though I don't always know what I'm doing with those web pages, but it puts me out there.
All right. First recruiter question for Chris. What are you seeing in the marketplace as in demand for software testers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure everyone here knows that technologies are always changing. There seems to be a new framework of a testing tool or even a development tool out almost every month, if not more often than that. Right now, having worked at RMC for the last 2 years, worked on a number of different testing roles, most of which are focused in on the automation space. So working with some of those automated tools, Clint and I were talking before the meetup here, like Selenium is probably the most popular tool that I've seen since working with RMC. Aside from that, we're seeing some newer technologies like Gherkin, Cucumber. Of course, there's always going to be like the Team Foundation server and some of those other actual testing tools that are always going to be in use. But just staying up on those new technologies and the different frameworks that are coming out, just so you can be more acquainted with it. So I don't think organizations are expecting you to come in to have 5 years of experience with a tool that's only a year old. That's pretty unrealistic. So even if you're not using it in your professional environment, just staying up to date on those technologies or just becoming more familiar with the frameworks as a whole would only help you out here on your job search and as you're moving forward in your career too.
Excellent. So next question, we'll keep going down the road for Clint. What avenues are there to become involved in the software testing community?
Well, there's the aforementioned Twitter. There's also, at least a few years ago, I was blogging and reading other people's blogs. Like, I think the blogging was more popular a few years ago than it is now. I think that people are doing more like threaded tweets on Twitter or having like Instagram stories or whatever. I don't think people's own personal blogs are as popular as they used to be, but that was one way that I started out. Was I wrote a lot of blog posts and linked to them on Twitter. Additionally, going to conferences, which that's sort of a spoiler for later in the talk. I've got the questions also. But yeah, going to conferences, speaking at conferences, going to meetups, speaking at meetups, and also like being part of like technology Slack communities could be a thing. For example, I'm part of like the C++ Slack community. You can talk to other people, or there's all kinds of that's sort of like a shadow social media thing where like if you find out about like different Slack rooms that you can be in, that's another way to interact.
So I thought of also attending conferences in person, but also online. You can learn a lot about the people and the presenters in places where you can't actually physically attend.
Yes, I also agree with conferences, meetups. I also have the avenue of, the local community college. And so met a lot of people through there that since I had some experience already, I could kind of help people, and answer questions, help suggest them to come to meetups and things like that. Help them find internships. It's kind of funny. Julie and I actually met years prior because she actually interned at Vertifor. And I was one of the people that, she paired with and helped mentor. But it was through LCC. So it's funny how that kind of happens. You don't always know how you're going to find your next mentor or friend in the industry. And sometimes just talking to people, even if you're in the checkout line somewhere, you find out that, hey, I know this person that does, software testing or is interested in it, that sort of thing. So besides the obvious meetups and conferences and that kind of thing, it can happen pretty much anywhere as well. So that would be, looks like Dane has a question. Question or a comment?
Yeah, mostly just a comment. I didn't hear it mentioned, so I wanted to make sure it got out there. Blogs were mentioned, and the new hotness now is podcasts. I don't know if anybody has gone and ventured into the podcast space, either on iTunes or other avenues, but there's a podcast for literally everything. Like what happened with blogs 5 years ago is happening with podcasts now. Like everyone is doing a podcast. Everyone and their cousin is doing a podcast. I haven't found any good quality assurance podcasts yet, but there may be some good ones out there.
I have not listened to any of the testing podcasts. I know that Alan Page, who used to be at, apparently Matt's got one too? Yeah. I haven't listened to anybody's podcast, so it's not just you. What's that? The Testing Show podcast with Matt Heuser. That's one. And then, so Alan Page has got one that he's always talking about. And then I think maybe Richard Bradshaw's got one. Richard Bradshaw's like YouTube. Okay, yeah. Him and Evil Tester, they do YouTube things too. Yeah, so that's another
thing. He also has not a super robust YouTube channel, but they're just starting. Gurok, the producers of Test Rail, also have a good YouTube channel. They do a lot of hot button industry issues around agile, safe, working around frameworks. I'm not sure why they do it as a test storage solution, but it's great that they do because they get experts to come in and talk about it. So YouTube, podcasts, all kinds of new stuff. Brave new world.
Web 2.0.
All right, great question. Next question is for Chris. What level of engagement are companies looking for technology professionals to have in the industry?
Absolutely. I think that answer really varies depending on the organization that you're working in. I know, for example, here at TechSmith, they sponsor a lot of meetups. I had GlegNet here last week. Obviously, the testers one here again. So they are pretty big advocates for going out and doing that professional development and being an active part in some of these local meetups. Aside from that, I think kind of owe it to yourself to have an updated LinkedIn profile if you are on the social media, of course. That is one of probably the biggest pieces and pieces of information that I look at when I'm doing my job. And I know a lot of our clients as well look at people's LinkedIn profiles just to see that progression of how you started out as a developer of auto owners and then into testing, now a test lead now. I mean, that really goes a long ways in telling that full story than just a couple quick bullet points on the resume. Aside from that, obviously going out and getting the certifications. I know next month you're doing the Safe Agile training, so that's going to be pretty big. I'm starting to see more and more of our clients looking for that certification, but just going out, doing your homework on what's out here local. I mean, a lot of organizations, they'll even offer to compensate their employees to go out to meetups such as like this. So There's a lot of options out there and a lot of different avenues that you can go and pursue to really establish yourself as a brand in not only the Lansing market, but, the IT market as a whole. So, there's a lot of different options for you to get out there and get your name out there too.
All right, Clint, who do you follow in the software testing community to help advance your career? And also, how do you follow them?
Okay. Well, mostly I follow them on Twitter. The people that I have been following, and I'm going to leave somebody out, I'm sure. And Matt's in the room. I follow Matt. I follow a guy named Noah Sussman who talks about DevOps stuff a lot. Katrina Clokey, I mentioned before, she's a test manager out in New Zealand, and she's got a lot of really good stuff. Alan Page, who used to be at Microsoft and now is the test manager at Unity. Trying to think of who else. Michael Bolton, as we said before, he's one of the rapid software testing guys. Everybody's got a different way of interacting with the Twitter platform, right? And so some of them are like broadcasting testing content, and some people are talking about their cats, but they're interesting testing people, right? Michael Bolton, for example, he's like mainly on there with his personal crusade to get people to stop calling automated tests. But he also has links to his blogs, which are good. I'm sure I guess one thing you could do is, if you wanted to see the people who I follow on Twitter, you could, at VS Computer is my Twitter handle. You can ignore the stuff that I'm posting and just look at who I follow, and that might be valuable. VS Computer, like VSCOMPUTER. VS Computer.
Julie, even though that you're not on social media, are there people that you follow? And how do you follow them?
I do not.
Have you? Is there anybody of interest in the software testing community that you are interested in?
You caught me off guard. I have to
Yes.
think.
Okay. We'll come back.
It's funny. There's lots of people that I kind of follow casually, but I really haven't looked to them for like advancing my career per se. It's kind of just a collection of ideas and thoughts and, what they've been through kind of things. Same with I'll look at big companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and find out, what they're doing methodology wise, or things that they've tried, or what makes a good team, through their studies and things like that. But I think one of the things that I did that helped me advance my career was I looked at the job postings of what I wanted to be. And I went to go see what I was missing out of those things on those job postings. So if they said, hey, we want somebody to be a senior, because at the time I was just a QA analyst. Okay, what am I missing? And so, they would have things like know how to do automation. So you would have to get your coding skills, leadership qualities, things like that, being able to speak in front of people. All those kinds of things would be in the job postings. And that's what would help me in turn. Okay, I got to figure out how to do those things. That might be kind of a weird roundabout answer to the question, but it personally helped me, I think, to get where I wanted to be, which, now I'm a senior lead software, tester. And so it took a while, it took going back to school. It took going to more conferences. It took networking. It took a lot of those different things. But that's what got me there, I think.
A couple more people. The authors of the Agile testing books, Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory, they're also out there on Twitter, as well as Elizabeth Hendrickson from Pivotal, who's got a lot of cool stuff to say about Agile things. And also a lot of the original signatories of the Agile Manifesto are out there, like Brian Merrick and Ron Jeffries are out there arguing about Agile all the time. So that's another good spot to pick up on Agile things.
Julie, did you think of anything?
I really like the author of Explore It, which is Elizabeth Hendrickson. And if I was going to follow someone, I would want to see how she is progressing and kind of the charge she's leading.
Excellent. All right, we'll go back to Teresa. Conferences can help testers grow their skills and meet others in the industry. What conferences should I attend, and why would you recommend them?
One of the first conferences I went to personally was Kalamazoo X, which not everybody goes to because it's more of a soft skills conference. But for me, I felt like at the time, soft skills weren't really talked about as much. So I've been going to that one for a number of years now. And that was some of the people that made me, join Twitter. And, we started following each other. Besides that, I've been to the AST conference when it was, in the state. That was good. Also, I attend dev conferences, which, not always is a huge thing for QAs to do, but I feel like it, exposes me to other technologies and struggles that maybe developers are going to that you can help relate to when you go back to the office. And also, I do know code a bit, so if I'm doing automated tests and things like that, it may open my eyes to some other things like that. There's been times where I've tried to get a group of people to go to conferences. There's been times where I've gone to conferences all alone. When you go all alone, it kind of forces you to mingle, meet people. You eat lunch with people that you don't know, start talking to them. Not everybody is confident enough to do that maybe, but I think in a lot of those instances, I've learned a lot more just because I was completely out of my comfort zone and forced to, literally choose my own track. Sometimes you go to conferences and it's like, oh, which one are you going to? I want to go to that one too. Well, literally, if there's nobody to talk to, you choose your own track, and then you come across those other people that maybe you met in, a different track earlier, run into them again. Oh, hey, how was that one? So I feel like I've met a lot of more people at the ones I go to by myself. But I don't have a set of conferences that I go to all the time, except for usually Kalamazoo X, because I like soft skills and think they should be talked about.
The one I'm planning to attend this year is Agile and Beyond, and I am looking forward to that as it's fairly local. And then the other one where several of our coworkers have actually spoken is QA or the Highway, and that one's in Ohio earlier in the year, and both Clint and Jeff. You didn't do it there? My mistake. I know the two of you did, and Jess. Got it. Oh, you've got your own.
I've never been to two different conferences, but I've been to both of them twice. I went to the AST conference, which is CAST, twice, and I went to CodeMash twice. CodeMash is down in Ohio also. I recommend both of those conferences. I found them both very valuable both times that I went. I can't speak for every conference because I've only ever been to the two of those, but I will say that it's definitely worth going. Like, I came back with like a significantly shifted paradigm every time I've gone to one of these conferences. Because I'm a lead, I have a bunch of one-on-ones with other testers, and like the number of times that I've referred back to my notes from CodeMash, I can't even count it on two hands. The number of times I've talked about like the soft skills type conversations that we had at CodeMash this year. Also, another thing, if you're a parent, then CodeMash has got like this kids mash thing where like there's like a kid track to send your kids through all these sessions. So like my son has been asking me like once a week, like when are we going to get his kids mash proposal ready for CodeMash 2019. So I'm thinking about that now. So.
All right, next up is a question for everybody, but we'll start off with Chris. We've been talking a lot about soft skills, and so the question is, soft skills such as verbal and written communication, collaboration, problem solving, among others, are needed for many job roles. What do you see as the most important soft skills for software testers, technology professionals to develop? Chris?
Yeah. Definitely soft skills are probably one of the, probably one of the most important piece to any job nowadays. I've seen it recently where organizations are a lot more lenient, like on the number of skills, the number of years of experience that they need for a specific role. They'd much rather bring in more of a junior level candidate who seems more coachable, essentially, and someone that strives to be a part of that innovative culture. Has a lot of, I guess, creative ideas too that they're bringing to the table. Having those soft skills of just being like an effective communicator, knowing how to actively listen and gather those requirements from the business users. A lot of times these QA roles and tester roles are working directly with the business too. So you have to be comfortable talking to not only your technical team members, but some of the business users as well. Aside from that, also having some of that knowledge, let's say you don't have technology A and B, and they're looking for A, B, C, and D, but you've got C and D covered. If you're able to come into the interview with that background knowledge and just be able to kind of talk through your thought process of how you would go through and actually learn that certain skill set is a huge plus that we're starting to see more and more of. In terms of like the most important soft skill, I think just being, excuse me, an effective communicator as well as a listener is always going to be probably the two biggest things to any position. I think that goes for, even outside the IT industry too.
I'm going to ramble for a second because I don't really know what I was about to say. But the thing that I talk to other testers about most is soft skillsy type stuff a lot more often than any hard skills, like working directly with developers. It's like working in a team collaborative environment is very, like, your communication is extremely important, and having and using influence in the right way to make the software project go better is sort of the name of the game, right? Like, so it's the most impact a tester can have on its team is not necessarily finding bugs, but to work with the developers to get safety procedures in place so that bugs don't happen. But that's a really hard row to hoe, right? Because you're working with a bunch of different personalities. So I don't know what kind of recommendation I can make for that besides like have a high level of emotional intelligence if you don't have some. Which, like, I'm not sure how to make a recommendation out of that, but I think it is extremely important.
One of the things I learned when I started my internship at Vertafore was the recognition that I didn't know the language of insurance. And so one of the greatest growth points for myself was learning that language. And I think the same thing is true with any technology area we get into, to learn to speak the language, to talk about things the way the rest of the team does. So learn the correct terminology for the hardware and the parts that we're working on, or I don't know. So it's a gaining of knowledge and being able to express yourself in a way that you're understood by the audience you're talking to. And then, but I agree with Chris. I've always felt that listening is more than half of the conversation. If you've got to be able to hear what they're saying and hear what they're not saying, and then that makes it easier to communicate and actually get to a resolution for wherever the conversation is trying to go. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with Julie a lot on the point of learning the speak of what everybody is talking about on the team and around, because that helps even with documenting bugs. I remember when I first started, I would document a bug and couldn't explain the bug, but I'm sitting there trying to write it out, and it was like, this is painful. And so learning that helped tremendously, when I was first getting started. I think one of the reasons why communication is so important for QA is because, in a way, we're kind of crushing dev dreams daily when we find bugs, to make it funny, but they worked hard on this thing. They think they got everything down. They think it's ready to go. And then, man, you just found a bug. How do you relay that message without hurting feelings and making people feel defeated? And not everybody, takes it that seriously, but some people do, So finding the best way to communicate to different people, I think that's one of the tricks that I think as QAs we learn, we'll relay a bug to a dev this way, and then a different dev will relay it a little bit different, or display it a little bit different, or do it the way they prefer, or that sort of thing. And another reason communication is so important is because our job is kind of to go against the grain. You can be in a meeting, a planning or grooming meeting, and everybody's like, yeah, this is great. This is so great. And then all of a sudden, as a QA, you're like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Well, did we think about this? Trying to relay those in a way that doesn't slow down the process to the point where you're not making progress, but you're actually asking these questions in a valid way and making people think. And sometimes, and hopefully most of the time, helping the solution be better than what it was if you wouldn't have brought those things up. So communication is huge, because that's a lot of what we do in the long run is communicate ideas, bugs, to people. So.
All right. We'll come back and start off with Clint. What tools or practices would you consider instrumental for growing your software testing career?
I can only give you the things that I have found instrumental in my own testing career, because I can only speak from that experience, I suppose. But I think something that Julie mentioned early on was the heuristic test strategy model, which I would encourage any tester who has been to start their first testing job, wait 3 months, get the fear of, okay, they're paying me to do something here, but I don't know what it is that they want me to do. And then look up the heuristic test strategy model by James Bach and Michael Bolton, because basically it's like a 5-page, extremely small print instructions on how to be a good software tester. And I think that's probably the tool that's helped me the most in my career, is going back to that thing over periodically is just extremely valuable for me.
I thought of the same one. So, I guess the other thing that's helped me a lot has been pairing or working with other people. And that's beneficial to me because then I can see through someone else's eyes and I get a sense of where their thought process comes from and where it goes. And that helps. It's the synergy, that person has ideas, I have ideas. And then when we vocalize them and work them together, then we come up with a whole different set of ideas. And so it is just an explosive way of being able to approach testing and be most successful, in my estimation.
For me, since I had no experience at all in software testing, getting your hands dirty in the actual skill sets that you need. So like for me, I had never seen SQL in my life. I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible. So I needed to get that skill because that was important to understand more of what I was doing. And so one day it just clicked. The domain made sense because I could actually use SQL to see what was in the database and how it connected to the front end. And it was just like, it was kind of like, the movie A Beautiful Mind. All of a sudden everything started lighting up and it was like, whoa. But then also one of the things that helped, and it's not a tool, but it was actually, I guess a practice, but I made friends in other departments, sometimes on accident. I remember the first time I met some people that were doing like production support, I deleted all of their accounts on accident. In our pre-prod environment, we had a security scan thing that was going through, and I made it an admin account instead of a non-admin. So it went through and just deleted everybody. And so I had to go through and introduce myself as the new QA girl that deleted everybody. And do you need your account back? And so I made friends and started going to lunch with people. And through those friendships, you're going to lunch, you're eating, but then you can also bounce an idea off of somebody like, hey, I was in this web, this section of the site. This was looking kind of weird. Or what do you think about this? Or how is this configured? Or, and that helped me I think, greatly, because then if I was stuck on something, even in the office, and just was like, I'm not sure about this, I could just send them a Slack message or whatever and just say, hey, I'm in here. Is this configured right? Or, that type of thing. And I did that with all types of people, all types of departments. And so got to know people that way, but also learned a lot too at the same time while having fun at lunch.
All right, we will stick with Teresa for this question. There are a lot of mixed feelings on software testing certifications in the industry. ISTQB, CSQE, CSTE. Should I get a software testing certification?
I feel like I've been asked this before, many times in my career. Obviously, if there's a position that you want, or you are looking to get that requires it, by all means, you needed to get the job. So of course, you would need that. For me, it doesn't show necessarily your work quality or anything like that. It's, do you know these words on the page? Can you recite them back? Do you understand what they mean? Me personally, I've always had, I guess, struggles with standardized tests, I guess you can put it. Got all A's in high school, valedictorian, but I had a very average score on my ACT and SAT. Just standardized tests were not my thing. But when it came to actually knowing the information and being able to do it, like play it back and perform it, way better at that. And that was always my thing. So for me personally, like, a certification does not mean that you can actually, it does not equal that you can do the job. It means you can pass a test. But I mean, a lot of times, if that's the industry you're in and you need to have it, that's great. Like, you need to have that, for them to take you seriously, and for you to, maintain the position. So, but I'm more of a hands-on, can you do this?
So I agree with you on that. I've only found one company locally that seems to require having this sort of certification. And the different testers I've spoken with in all different parts of the state, there's a mixed response to that it's not particularly necessary, seems to be the most prevalent one. The only one I personally have is the SAFE certification, and that was because the opportunity was provided through TechSmith, and I was happy to learn and be a part of that. But I can't say that it's important either way, just in my experience.
I think my recommendation for somebody who is new to the testing industry would be to try to learn a lot and then have a online profile that demonstrates that what they've learned and that they've got skills and that they have opinions and thoughts about, like, thoughtful opinions about the testing industry and stuff that can be discovered online, like by people like Chris. I would personally, if a place, having seen the ISTQB materials, I think that if a organization required ISTQB certification to apply, I probably wouldn't want to work in that organization. I would, and if there was if somebody were able to see what was available about me, what I have contributed to the companies that I've been working at, but I'm not ISTQB certified, and that's disqualifying for me as a candidate, I guess I'm okay with being disqualified for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Is since you're in the other side of the software testing industry, what have you heard about certifications, and have you heard a lot of companies request people that have these skills?
Yeah. So for the test roles I've worked on in the past, there hasn't been a requirement for one of these certifications. I think the testing roles specifically are much more focused on overall experience and knowledge with those certain tools or programs. If you're trying to get into like the security field, though, having like the CISSP is pretty important and almost like a must-have if you're trying to get into the security field. But kind of like everyone else was saying, I don't think certifications are as important in this side of the industry as the security side.
And at this point, we will take any questions that other people might have.
Any chance we could get a written list of everybody's recommendations for books and blogs and those types of things?
If we post it on the meetup thing, will that show up for people? Okay.
So I have one. It's kind of a fun one. So if you could go back, so I know myself included, I kind of stumbled into the QA realm. If you could go back and do it all over again, would you take the same path? Or what would you do differently?
I had a very, very strange way of getting into this. I think personally I would have liked, I guess, more reassurance that I would end up in a place that, I would feel good and have, like, I have a Monday through Friday job and I have insurance and I know what's going to happen. Like, being in music, I kind of followed my heart because I love music. But then, being a musician is very, very stressful in its own ways, just because, your paycheck isn't always guaranteed. You got to hustle a lot. But I kind of like my story, but I don't know if I would, I don't know how much I would change, because most of the time there isn't really a software testing like degree. And I think at that, back when I was in high school, nobody was really talking about it either. So it wasn't one of those things that people really knew about. I mean, we assumed that things we were buying and purchasing were being tested, but we didn't really know how to get into it, So yeah, I don't know how much I would change, but I guess knowing that stability would be coming would have been nice.
So I think that, can I answer this too? Uh-huh. So it sounds like we all kind of started out in the same realm. I was a studio artist before going back to school and getting an associate's degree. And same story, you work hard to land a job, and then the paychecks are unevenly spaced, and there's no security from one thing to the next. And then I got married later in life, and we decided that I should go back to school. I had a bachelor's, but that I should get a degree in something that was a little bit more marketable. And it was just right when the recession was hitting, so art was not the forefront of people's minds, especially in Michigan. And so I really feel like it was inspired that I went back to school. It took me 4 years to do a 2-year degree, but I had a baby in the process. I finished the one job, moved into the next one. It's probably not my dream career, but there's a great deal of stability here, and there's opportunity to be creative and continually learning, and those are all things that feed my soul. And so, yeah, in retrospect, I'm glad I'm here. I don't mind the path I took, and I'm grateful for being here and what the opportunities I have. So it's good. It's all good. I'm really glad.
Same answer as Julie, pretty much. I guess if I'm trying to think of if I were to go back and do anything differently, because in a lot of cases, as I said earlier, like I was sort of constrained to make the choices that I made anyway, so there wasn't really a lot of wiggle room. But if I were to do anything differently, I think that I might have focused earlier in my career on growing my technical skills, because I feel like you get a lot of bang for your study time by studying technical stuff, particularly in the testing realm. Like, for example, like I was struggling for like a year on the team that I'm on right now, because I don't know anything about, I'm on a team that does like low-level C++ video rendering, and I didn't know anything about low-level C++ video rendering, so I was really struggling on testing the changes. And then started spending a couple hours every couple of nights on a game, a book about doing video rendering for video games in C++. And just like that, getting like 20 hours into that book has like been a gigantic benefit on my team, which like helped me so much. And like, I think that probably if I were to go back and do anything differently, it would be to sort of jump on the technical side of whatever team that I'm on, try to do some self-directed learning on that as early as possible, as opposed to waiting.
All right.
So I'm going to say that I did no technology. I am old enough that computers were not required in high school. I had access to one in college where I wrote all my papers, but I knew nothing about anything. And I got into it really late, so that would be the one change I would make, like with our son. He's learning stuff early on because it's only going to be more important as we move forward.
So Julie and Teresa, I know you said that when you got started in the testing side of things, you went to LCC. Did either of you go through the ePathways program? Just curious. Okay. And I know that program doesn't exist anymore and that grant is gone, but did anyone in the room go through that?
No, I didn't go through it. I helped build it.
Okay.
I was a guest speaker one year for the kickoff for ePathways and kind of gave everybody a vision of what QA is and what it could be for them if they chose that path. And I met quite a few people in the ePathways program. I think one of our devs might have been in ePathways. But I think a lot of people were just going back on their own. And a lot of them have gotten positions in IT, people that I, had classes with. Some of them actually, some of the people in my software testing class have gotten jobs at Vertifor, because we referred them and said, hey, why don't you come apply? But yeah, met lots of ePathways people, and they were eager to learn. Some people had, it seems like more struggles than others, just depending on the career and the background they had. But I think everybody took something good away from it.
Since it seems a lot of us have come from other backgrounds beyond QA or even technology, would you say that like classically trained classes would be better or on-the-job training in your opinion?
I'll pick up the mic first. On the job, absolutely. The nuances are much more real and it's applicable. And like Teresa's been saying, the hands-on, I think, yeah, there's nothing like getting in there and poking and tripping and just learning as it moves forward and as you're in it.
I'm stealing the mic again, but I mean, it's one of those things where me being in music background. I mean, when you think about it, let's say you've never played violin before, and you read a book on how to play violin. Like, what? Like, are you gonna sound good when you pick up the violin? No, but you read the book. But no. I would say the hands-on is definitely where it's at. Funny story too, Jeff was actually in my interview when I first started 10 years ago. He was working at Circon, which is Vertifor, before we got purchased by Vertifor. And I interviewed by them drawing out a web page on the board and saying, what would you test? And they knew I had no background in software testing, but everybody has that skill of, okay, I know what a web page should be like, and I know what annoys me, and I know what I don't like, and I wish it did this, and there's creative people that do that. You don't have to have a computer science degree to do those things. You can be from all types of different backgrounds, but you know how you want things to work and you want things to be, and having, I think, different degrees and different backgrounds is what makes testing so awesome, because not everybody's going to find the same things. Not everybody's going to think the same way. And I think that brings a lot of variety to testing, and to make overall, the more people testing that are different like that, make the product better in the long run.
Speaking as somebody who spends some time interviewing testers, not everybody has that skill. But I think that the question of whether or not on-the-job experience is better than classes, it's pretty clear to me that, yeah, I think that on-the-job experiences or experiences doing software development in some other capacity, right? Like I think that almost like taking a programming class and testing your own software in that is like almost as valuable as taking a testing class, because it gives you a little bit more context. That being said, I did take the rapid software testing training at one point, and I thought that was extremely valuable. But that's the guys who did that heuristic test strategy model thing. So I guess it depends on the quality of the course. Sure. And also like what the context is under which you're taking it. Like if you're already working as a software tester, it might help you more than if you were somebody who had no idea what software testing was and then you were coming into it fresh.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's go ahead and wrap things up with final thoughts that you would like to share with the crowd.
Final thoughts. I guess, software testing has treated me well. I definitely did not know that was going to be my career path when I got out of school. I had no idea. But I think all of the things that I had done in the past actually kind of came together in this position, because there was a lot of different skill sets that I, was able to bring to the table. Creativity. I'd worked in retail, so social skills and talking to people and approaching people, looking at problems from different ways. Keeping a schedule, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to summarize everything, but I think it's a good place to be, and it's definitely a career that's not going anywhere. It's not on its way out. So I think it's a good place to be.
Parting thoughts are be yourself and just continue to grow as a person and give everything you have. And I kind of think the wave of the future is automated testing. So including myself, I am actively pursuing ways to learn to participate in that. So I would just encourage everyone to move along that way.
I think that, I guess, the thing to what Teresa was saying with the job not going away, but also hearing what Chris is saying about like, well, everybody needs to have automation in order to get a job now. I think that one of the things that's going to be important going forward for software testers is to be able to articulate what software testers bring to the table that isn't just making sure that things that we said used to be true are still true. Like, I think the ability for somebody to assess a product critically and communicate effectively what's wrong with it, as opposed to saying, okay, yes, what I said yesterday is also true today. I think that being able to articulate the value of that to employers and to teams is going to be really important because the job is not really something that you can necessarily automate away, but that's not necessarily clear to the people who are spending the money on these salaries.
Not only the QA space as a whole, but I think the entire IT industry is always changing. I mean, sometimes we see different things come out every month or even more often than that. So kind of in line with everyone else is saying, just stay up to date on what's out there technology-wise. Keep in mind the different options, even though you're not an active job seeker. Take a look at that job description. Take a look at that senior role to see what those skills would be for you to qualify for that. And whether it's doing some of your own training on your own time or going to meetups like this or different conferences or even reading a book. I mean, just staying up to date on what's happening in the industry as well as the market as a whole, I think is only going to help you out as you're continuing to progress your careers.